my land, take me where I cannot stand. I don't care, I'm still free. You can't take the sky from me.
Welcome back to the Real World Podcast. Firefly now, Serenity later. What else would it be right now? There's no huge movies to interrupt us yet. We may actually complete a full one of these mini-series without actually having to stop and talk about something completely different. So, more Firefly. And later, some Serenity. This week, we will be talking about the 2 episodes War Stories and Trash, which, we've been coming off some pretty good sort of 1-2 punches the last few weeks, and I'd say that tradition continues here. What says you, Mike Thomas, about as a package, these 2?
I'd say it's more of a trend that continues in a tradition, but it's
okay.
We don't need to quibble over word choice in front of our friends and family, which of course that's exactly what our listeners are.
Yeah, people who pity us.
I mean, granted, the order in which we're doing it is not exactly arbitrary, but the way we pair them up is essentially meaningless. But this is definitely the second strongest duo of episodes we've watched after the Ariel added gas combo. This is like it's Firefly firing on all cylinders. They know what they are, they know what they do well, and now they're executing it very, very well, and very, very early in the show's run. Sadly, also very late in the show's run, but
yeah, they hit a stride. Like, it feels like they've settled in. They know what everything is. They work the kinks out. This is just them making good content. So let's start with War Stories, which was intended to be episode 10, aired as episode 9. Pretty close. Written by Cheryl Kane, directed by James Contner. Odd name. Again, lots of odd names making Firefly. So this one features... both of these, what they have in common is they feature the return of a guest character, which is a rarity, so to get 2 in a row is serendipitous, I would say. This time, we are dealing with Niska, who you may remember from The Train Job, who is a very nasty Czech, as in Czechoslovakian, crime boss who hired them, and they went back on the deal. So he holds a grudge. And after discovering where Serenity is, he sends some of his people to capture Mal and Wash while they're trying to sell some of the drugs that they got from Ariel. Continuity. So while they're being tortured and they confront each other with some harsh truths about Zoe, which we will talk about at length, Zoe shows up to try and pay Niska off to make good on them screwing him over. He only lets her have one of them. She chooses her husband, Wash. He then cuts off Mal's ear because he's a bad motherfucker. The crew lead a massive assault on Niska's station. The most action-y thing that happens in all of Firefly, I would say. Book proves to be quite capable in a firefight. Simon and Kaylee less so. And River actually saves Kaylee while no one else is watching and kills 3 dudes and says some very cool stuff. We will be talking about that. They save Mal, reattaches ear, Niska's still alive, tensions have settled. The end. Big fan of War Stories, personally. Very action-y plot. Some really good stuff, like delving beneath what has been a given up until now, like getting into some inter-character relationships. They even... our common complaint is nothing's happening with Book and River, and you get some pretty cool moments from both of them, like as close to payoffs as we're going to get in the show. For Book, certainly, River kind of has I don't know, it's between this and what's going to happen at the end, but yeah, in terms of that, in terms of the action and that kind of stuff, huge fan.
Yeah, it's definitely in that top half. We keep teasing.
It's basically everything's in the top half, and there's 2 episodes in the bottom half.
It's basically just like Shindig and that other one coming up whose name I've forgotten. Like those 2 are definitely not in the top half. Bushwhacked, also not in the top half. Everything else is in the top half. But I really think that more just speaks to the strength of the show in general at this point.
Safe, not in the top half.
Definitely not. And like I said, it's an episode that just shows the show firing on all cylinders. You really understand who these characters are by this point. They take full advantage of that. Everything that happens makes sense, basically. The logistics of Niska getting away, I guess, I don't know. Maybe I should just rewatch like that sequence. I didn't quite follow it. I
It's
expected
very
there to
chaotic.
I expected it to be clear how he got away. That's just how I remembered it. But it's like they just like cut away, and all of a sudden he's gone, and there's a throwaway line at the end saying, "Oh, we should have killed him."
And he, as I said, he's one of the few characters that gets to come back.
Yeah.
Do you think he justified a return appearance? I thought he was a pretty like menacing figure in the first one. And they crank it right up here.
I mean, he definitely does for sure, and I think like they were I don't know what they were setting him up for, but I think based on his first two appearances, you kind of set him up for like a big two-parter in which you kill him off later on, because there's really nowhere you can go with him. He's not a character you can redeem in any way. Like Saffron there's a tiny path of redemption that can at least be teased or explored, or maybe even really go further with. With this guy, it's really just like, you know what? At the end of the day, this dude is a pretty sick, evil dude who's just super charismatic, and that unfortunately is not the type of thing that lends itself to long, continuous plot lines.
No.
But he's quite fun in the role. They use him very well. They don't overdo it with him. They have a very, very adorable opening bit with him and Book. Of preaching, or not preaching, but
quoting,
explaining, pontificating on the works of Shang Tzu.
Well,
right?
The subtitles, and from how they're saying it, are Shan Yu. I assumed they were talking about Sun Tzu. Maybe it's some sort of like bastardization of what he's actually called, and it is the same person. I don't know, but the subtitles very clearly say Shan Yu. I can consult the actual script, which I have to hand. Yeah, Shan Yu. Shan Yu says the actual script. So who knows what's going on there? But yeah, like you said, I do really like that mirroring of Book talking to Simon about it as a way of trying to sort of communicate with him about River and be a shepherd and sort of offer annoying but helpful advice in a way. And then it also helps with the clear thing of Book wasn't always a shepherd. He was probably a bad man. And Niska is quoting or talking about the same exact thing. And I think actually in Niska's first appearance, Shepard knew who he was.
That sounds correct.
Yeah. It's just a nice way of sort of tying the two together. Like, you say something about Book, you kind of say something about Simon, and you also reintroduce a villain and tie things together. It's well written.
Yeah, I actually really liked Simon's response being like, like sadism wrapped around that flowery like it's not exactly what he said, but basically I think really kind of calling out definitely a segment of a population that can kind of romanticize like beautiful evil, quote unquote. Like, and I thought that was kind of a nice beat for Simon to get to play.
Definitely, I like that little scene. Like he's like needling him a little bit, but it's just enough, like in a good place that it fits with Book. He does that a bit. Like he likes to go to characters and kind of annoy them into helping them. Good little episode for Book generally, I would say. I
found watching it as that you feel like he's definitely holding back still. I mean, like, is that self-imposed? Like, what? Right, we don't know. We'll never know.
We'll never know.
But, it's very... I think he's definitely just the most tragic in terms of, we never really even came close to scratching the surface with him.
Yeah.
Like, it's just an impression of what was going to be there.
Yeah. But, It starts off pretty subtle, like the matching the same Shan Yu quotes as Niska, and then you get little character moments like Anara has a client come aboard, and everyone's very excited to see who it is. And Kaylee and Jane are sort of waiting and sort of desperate to get a peek. And Book scolds Kaylee for being nosy. But then when she says, "Here they are," Book's like ears prick up a little bit. Like he can't help but betray his sort of true nature, as it were. And it goes from subtle to, he's going to the scene of an ambush and like expertly assessing what happened there. And then by the end, he's shooting people. So he says, "Isn't the Bible quite pretty specific about killing people?" And he says, "Quite specific, but it's somewhat fuzzier about kneecaps." And he proceeds to shoot a lot of dudes in the knee and other places. I don't know if he actually kills anyone, but he certainly puts a lot of bullets in a lot of people. And you get sort of Zoe Jane and Book all shooting people together, and it's pretty crazy. Like at the beginning of the show, I'm pretty sure you wouldn't have called that this is what he would be doing before the end of the season, even if it is incredibly frustrating that we will never know more than this. That's right. I'll leave it dead until you say something.
I had nothing bad. That's why.
Fair enough. So, moving on from Book, let's talk about. I mean, the real driving force of this episode is addressing the dynamic between Mal and Zoe and Wash. It's something that the network infamously wanted. They didn't approve of Zoe and Wash being married because they wanted Mal and Zoe to have some kind of Sam and Diane type thing, which is crazy. And this may have been Joss's sort of protest to that notion, to be like, well, if you want to talk about it, let's talk about it, and make it a bit ridiculous. And it's also, I think this is the most we ever get into the Zoe and Wash dynamic, like what's really going on there. Like we see plenty of examples of them being very nice to each other and very honest with each other, and then in this one it's different. We see sort of below the surface a bit. I mean, it's a complicated triangle to deal with. I've kind of broken it down into the Zoe and Wash moments, and then the Mal and Wash moments, and then there's a little bit of Mal and Zoe. I don't know, but starting with Zoe and Wash, it all starts with them arguing about a plan that Wash had that Mal turned down, and he's sort of arguing that, you know, did Zoe fight his case? Does she agree with Mal? And that, of course, sort of bleeds into him accusing Zoe of always doing everything Mal says, and that is kind of what we've seen so far from Zoe. She will occasionally call him out, but in front of everyone else, she just toes the line and is the loyal number two to kind of rally the troops. We only ever see her disagreeing with Mal in private, I think. And it is an interesting sort of, you know, accusation to throw at her, because, you know, because that's everything we've seen so far. And I actually find it, while that is good, something I find a bit problematic is Zoe says the line of, because that's what this marriage needs, one more shouting match. We haven't actually really seen them shout at each other. Like, they disagreed over Saffron, and I think they had a minor spat about how much time they get to spend together, but really we haven't really seen much of that. And I mean, I like it because it's realistic, and like I like when shows kind of continue when we're not watching in a way. Like Community did that a lot. You'd have these revelations that came out that, you know, occurred between episodes, as it were, and like these people are living their everyday lives when we're not looking at them for 30 minutes. So I like stuff like that, but it is a bit like, I don't know, you'd maybe have wanted to see them fight. I don't know, I could go back and forth on that.
You know, I think it's one of those marriages that over a longer period of time would have become to see has been like a really powerful marriage on screen. And I think it's mostly just a marriage we get to hear about as opposed to see, which is kind of unfortunate. Because I think we know that there's a deep connection there. We know there's lots of obvious entry points of conflict, though, just based on the dynamic that they have to work together. I mean, that's kind of like not something that's really talked about in quite those terms on the show, but like actually working with your partner is an incredibly dicey proposition as it is.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's really, once again, I think it's just one of those things where it's just like you feel shortchanged on it overall, which is unfortunate. And actually, much like Book, the movie explores it, but doesn't really give it a ton. And actually, I think it kind of takes a few shortcuts within the movie, but maybe I'll change my mind upon seeing it again for the first time in a few years. But they draw. This is what I'll say about the portrayal of the marriage on the screen is that it's so powerful and so obvious just based on the chemistry that those two actors have. And they can easily draw from that and take shortcuts as a result. But it would have been nice to actually explore it a little bit more.
Yeah. So this disagreement and also Wash being jealous that the two of them go way back and they have all these war stories, hence the title, War Stories. He kind of petulantly forces his way into the drop-off of the drugs. He replaces Zoe, so it's Mal and Wash going to do it. And that leads to the two of them bickering with each other, Mal saying some quite funny stuff, not wanting to get in the middle of their nonsense, but also not wanting to abide it at all. And then when they're captured together, Wash is being insistent on, doing everything Zoe would do, and he just talks a lot and is very Wash, while Mal gets quite annoyed at him, which is pretty funny. But more importantly, while they're being tortured, and just before, really, they start really getting into it with Wash daring to ask the question, essentially, has anything happened between Mal and Zoe? And they tell a lot of truths here, where, Mal, with the body blow of, I don't think you're good enough for Zoe, and how, she doesn't do everything I tell her because I told her not to marry you. And, these are some quite harsh things to hear when, as far as we can tell, I mean, Zoe's probably Mal's best friend, but in terms of male best friends, Wash is probably Mal's best friend, and for him to say these things to him is pretty extreme, I would say. But, it's all very tricky. These two do clearly go way back, Mal and Zoe, so you can kind of understand Mal's sort of protectiveness of her, but then, his overbearing nature, if Wash makes her happy, who is he to say no? And Wash is also talking about how, love, honor, and obey, and Zoe doesn't obey him, but she obeys Mal. And all this is quite #, problematic, in my opinion, but I don't know. What do you feel on this issue?
It's tricky. I think it's Wash's reaction to everything is very human and very realistic. It sucks that, once again, we just really never got the story of their marriage through Zoe's perspective.
Yeah.
And really, we really don't get much from Zoe's perspective. I think this was kind of our last big shot at that. We'll have it a little bit in the next episode, but this is really Zoe's last big episode. And it's possibly her only big episode.
Yeah.
And it's not even really about her.
No,
or it's not told.
Yeah.
It's not told through her perspective. And that's a real testament to the work that Gina Torres does in general. That, you see Gina Torres as the second, name in the credits, and I can't imagine anyone would blink about that. But I mean, she really never gets a focus episode, and everyone else really does. I mean, Saffron essentially gets 2 focus episodes where you really get to understand her to a degree.
Yeah. River gets a movie.
Yeah. And it's interesting, though, that with Book, there's that sense of, and because there's such a mythology that's tied into Book's character, you feel like you missed out on more, and you kind of it's natural to just think, wow, they really blew it with Book. I don't think they blew it with Zoe, but they really, once again, you really just kind of scratch the surface of what makes Zoe tick.
Yeah. And if they were going to gradually give more time to Book and River, where was the time going to come for people like Zoe,
Yeah. And it just feels like she was much like her character, in the sense, within the confines of the show, such a reliable person that you don't need to really worry about them. The way the character worked as from a showrunner's perspective, such a reliable character, just a steady presence, that you didn't really need to focus on them. That's a shame.
It is.
And then when you combine that with the fact that her character basically exists to support Mal in public,
yeah.
Weird.
It's weird. When I try to describe her in previous episodes, right, who is Zoe? If you actually bullet point that, it doesn't sound all that compelling, and yet it is a fondly remembered character that people like. I guess it just speaks to it's just a testament to Gina Torres being a likeable, charismatic actress, that she could get something out of this material and sort of pick her spots where they're given. But hey, so that torture scene, it's great that they're completely ignoring the fact they're being tortured in a way, and they're just having this dispute while Niska's looking on, kind of perplexed. But during this, it also tells you a lot about Mal, in that you come to realize he's doing it, he's picking a fight with Wash on purpose because he wants to make him angry, because that will sort of help him steer into the pain kind of thing and not sort of succumb to the torture. And Mal not really concerned about himself, which Wash says when Zoe instantly picks him when given the choice of which one she's going to save. And you can argue that maybe she picked Wash because he wouldn't have lasted alone, or just undying love for the husband. Both valid, I would say. Wash remarks on how the torture experience told him a lot about Mal, and how Zoe had said how he'd saved all these people in the war, but him witnessing it firsthand that Mal is the kind of person that will put others above himself. It's Mal gets good stuff and good development in every single episode. I'd say bar none. And even if he's the third focus character or fourth or something, he still finds his moments. And I think, using that is in theory more about Wash and Zoe. It's just good. Being able to always inform us about Mal.
I think what's becoming increasingly clear on this watch is that while this is an ensemble show, the top tier characters is Mal, and then you have to go a couple tiers below to get to anybody else. And
it's probably River after that, and Jane.
And that's kind of shocking on rewatch see. Really, this is a show centered around Mal in a way that I did not fully appreciate before.
Well, people love Mal. They talk about Captain Reynolds with hushed tones.
And I think what Joss Whedon wrote is that this is he felt a really strong, I don't know if connection is the right word, but he just, it sounds like writing for Mal was very, very easy, or something that he just channeled his talents very well.
He's a tortured soul, isn't he? I love Mal. Mal's one of my favourite characters ever. I think he's such a sort of romantic, tortured, tragic character. Maybe it's it's kind of one note, and maybe that note isn't for everyone, but I personally, in the way that Joss does, identify with it on some level, where it hits me all of who he is. So, when Mal is left to be tortured, we get the delightful scene where Wash is now thinking he's Captain Gung-Ho, and he's all, people like us do this, and he's in his vest, gearing up, strapping ammo to himself, picking up all the guns, and seeing Wash and Zoe getting ready to go fight together is quite sweet. And just, I like that Wash now thinks he's an action hero because he lived through this experience. And, having the entire crew together and Mal somewhere else, I mean, we saw it a little bit with Out of Gas, but it was reversed, where we saw Mal and the others were missing. In this instance, you see the entire crew together, Mal missing. And I really like the touch that they exclusively, I think, call him the captain in this sort of time of need. And seeing them all sort of rally around to go rescue him, it makes good on all of the times where he put them before himself and went to such extreme measures to save them, was willing to be a dick in order to get them all through it. That all pays off when you see them all, even Simon, even Kaylee, picking up a gun, ready to go. Jane, to some of their surprise, I guess, because he's so money motivated and he and Mal are falling out a lot, but when you consider that Mal let him live one episode ago, kind of makes sense. But, he goes to get Vera, and he's ready to go save Mal. Yeah, and I really like the moment where they're sort of saying, right, let's go save him, and then it cuts to the torturer declaring Mal dead, and then we go to commercial break. I think that's just a great sort of bit of timing. Obviously, he's, they bring him back to life, restart his heart, but it's just a funny piece of, let's go save him, he's dead. So during the action-packed rescue of Mal, the big thing here is River, who she's always sort of left behind and sort of kept safe because she's so frail and she's been through so much. And what she does here is, when Kaylee retreats, lacking the confidence to attempt to shoot these people, and finds herself being approached by 3 dudes, River takes the gun off her and, without even looking, shoots 3 dudes dead immediately, and then says, "Ain't no power in the verse that can stop me." Which juxtaposes with when, earlier in the episode, she and Kaylee were running around like children, and when Kaylee managed to get an apple River had stolen back off her, she said those words. And for me, this is the coolest fucking moment in the whole show. Finally seeing River do something and be a badass, and then say something cool, and then also be, revert immediately back to this sort of a perpetual child. Like, I actually don't know how old River's meant to be. I assume teenage, but she's treated like a child.
I think high school.
Okay.
Probably like 17 to 18.
Yeah. But yeah, such a cool moment. It's sort of triumphant if you've been sort of waiting for like anything to pay off with River whatsoever. And I love the way Kaylee really sells it at the end of the episode because she's the only one that saw this happen, and everyone's sort of celebrating the job well done at the end. And sort of Kaylee like can't meet River's gaze almost, like she won't look at her. And it really sells like that this would be kind of a terrifying thing to see, like getting a glimpse into what River can do. But just overall, that entire like sequence. Awesome.
Yeah, it's with River. Obviously, it seemed like a much more planned long con. With Book, it seems kind of like random to me. It's like with River, it's like you can see them like sprinkling more and more and more, and then building to what was presumably going to be the big season 2 thing of fully fleshing out what happened to her and who she is and what she can do.
Yeah, I feel like they had like a pitch on Book, like, oh, he's actually going to be something else. But they didn't really have like and we'll slowly get to here. They just were like, well, we'll play with that as and when.
And with that, it feels almost like more, it's like convenience. Like, oh, you need someone to explain what just happened here? Sure, Book knows all about it.
Exactly.
Which is fine.
Yeah.
It's something that's bad. It's more just, I think, the contrast of the two of them kind of is interesting.
Yeah. Well, yeah. One of the sort of few critiques I would have of this episode, and it's kind of a critique of anything that ever does this. So when they're all going to rescue Mal, like, why wouldn't Niska just immediately kill Mal the second like trouble starts? Like, this happens in all sorts of things. Like, just kill the person,
or create like a hostage situation or something.
Stand down, or I kill him immediately.
Yeah.
But I think that's just, we've got 40 minutes and we're going to spend a lot of them not doing this firefight. We need to get through this quickly. So, for convenience sake, they're just going to save him.
And they execute the firefight very suddenly.
Yeah.
Not just the characters, but the show does too. So it kind of happens a little bit out of nowhere and it's over before you know it, to a certain degree.
Mm. Yeah, so, they rescue him.
I also love how they finally feel rich after that big score, and now all their money's gone. That feels like a constant thing that's happening, and something very much by design.
Yeah, that does happen more than once, I think. They get a score and then it gets stolen from them, or they have to use it to pay for something, and they're left with nothing. So, I mean, there's some very funny Jane moments as well. Him talking about, I'll be in my bunk when he notices that Anara's client is a woman. Wanting to get a closer look at Mal's severed ear, taking Wash's soup at the end. But taking the soup, right. So, after all of this, Wash and Zoe feel very bonded, and Zoe brings him soup, and everything's good, and Mal and Zoe tease him by, belaboring this sort of artificial, we must have sex to kill our sexual tension. But has anything really been resolved here? Because, I mean, Wash's fear that he confesses to Mal is that Mal is the kind of the one that got away for Zoe, that she never actually got to make good on any feelings she may or may not have for him. And it's like, yeah, we all survived this, but you're saying that you two shout at each other a lot, and clearly there's some sort of, I don't know, it just feels like an unearned sort of resolution. They're just well, everything's happy again. And I wonder, did Wash, hear any words that would actually realistically put his mind at ease?
Zoe saving him instantaneously, maybe.
Maybe, but if that's all it took, that dude is... I don't know. That's just one thing where I thought it needed another line here or there to kind of arrive at this ending more naturally, but it just kind of seemed like, well, we survived a traumatic thing, so everything's fine now. But I'm nitpicking because I'm a big fan of this episode. I think it's pretty tight, it's very actiony, and we learn some good stuff, and everybody gets to play, really, which is not as frequent an occurrence as you'd like. but they are trying to juggle 9 characters, plus if they have a guest or 2 that episode, so... Yeah, I like this one overall. Jane's funny, Mal's Mal, Zoe and Wash do some stuff, River finally makes good, Book has some big stuff. Simon continues to be a good actor. Kaylee kind of gets the short end of the stick. Anara
but she gets a big moment at the end.
Yes, true.
With River.
That's true. And Anara gets to titillate teenage boys by entertaining a female client. So... Oh, and she's concerned for Mal when he's captured, of course.
She has a very powerful role. Josh Whedon is a feminist.
This is true. Right. Well, let us move on. Let's talk about trash. And I'm not talking about me and you. I'm talking about the name of our next episode, episode 11, which aired second to last. Well, no, it didn't air. Where these are one of the ones that did not actually make air. So, bold new territory if you bought this on DVD. Or didn't they, I don't know, did they air them? But, later...
I don't think so. I mean, it's literally unaired. I mean, That's what it says on the back of the DVD.
Oh, okay. They aired Serenity.
Yeah.
But not... Okay, sorry, yeah. Alright, so, unaired. So, brave new content if you bought the show on DVD or watched it on Netflix or whatever. Written by Ben Edlund and Jose Molina. Directed by Vern Gillum. So, in this one, I said how these are 2 episodes where we have the return of guest characters, and Mike name dropped her earlier. Saffron is back, Christina Hendricks. So Mal is attempting to sell yet more of this medicine that they got back in Ariel. And the guy he's trying to sell it to, an old friend of his, introduces Mal to his new wife, and it is Saffron, or as she's called now, Bridget. And Mal and her start fighting, literally, each other. To the point that the new husband is sick of it and leaves them both behind. So Mal is without any money, Saffron is without whatever con she was running on him. So she attempts to convince Mal to help her out with some huge money con of some kind. Very clearly not to be trusted. And after Mal has a fight with Anara, he takes her up on the offer, and they do a big heist to steal an antique gun from a wealthy man on Persephone, where we've been before. And they're caught in the act by another person that Saffron is married to. And we believe her real name is Yolanda, based on what happens. After a lot of back and forth and sort of arguing about true feelings and motivations, they get away with the gun. She gets the drop on Mal, steals everything, leaves him naked in the desert. But luckily, Anara outsmarted her, and she gets the pistol and locks Saffron up to be picked up by authorities. It turns out it was a plan that Mal and Anara had all along, and Mal marches naked back onto the ship triumphantly. I'm not a huge fan of this one, personally. Don't know how you feel about it, but I don't massively care for it.
I think it is an extremely fun episode. It is, I think we've proven at this point that the caper story is something that Firefly is very well suited for, with its wide cast of characters, with its witty repartee, et cetera, et cetera. I think what's interesting to me about this episode is that it's really a Saffron episode. It is not. Yeah. There's not a lot of character work for anyone else.
No, it's kind of crazy.
Especially since Mal and Anara, while they have one genuine conversation at the beginning of the episode, are basically putting out a front for the rest of the episode. So anything they really talk about or say is really just kind of can be easily discarded. I guess the only other big thing is Simon in this episode. He basically gets Jane underneath his knife. River figured out through her mind powers that Jane portrayed him on Ariel, and Simon says, as long as we are in this crew together, you never have to worry about me doing anything to you. And, that is a good, C plot in the background kind of thing, kind of fills up the episod well.
Yeah. It's a good bit of continuity as well.
Yes. And feels very true. Simon, as he said, Schaumauer might be giving one of the 3 or 4 best performances on the show in a lot of ways, especially when you talk about the degree of difficulty with how normal he is next to all these colorful characters. But I think it's a really fun Monster of the Week story kind of thing for them, where it's all right, we need an adventure for them this week. What could we do? Sure, they steal a laser gun, and they
mess around with Saffron for a bit. I think it's oddly though. I do think it's a great way to continue the Saffron story, which is to kind of give her to repeat a lot of the ideas we saw in the first one, but to give her a little bit more depth at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And
now we know who she like really is and everything.
To a certain degree.
Well, now we know more about her.
We know more about her.
Her true nature.
And to the point that I think one powerful idea is that I think she's someone who's come to terms with the fact of what she's good at and how she can make her way in the verse, so to speak. But, a part of her would like to, not always be running, not always be lying, not always be swindling, not always be cheating, just simply because it's, it goes against human nature for the most part. There are very few people that are just wholly committed to that as like an ideology. So I thought that was kind of nice. The way they chose to execute that is kind of weird. It's hard. It's also hard to tell. We never really get to know this new husband, the new rich husband, well enough to make a real judgment about him, and thus to understand and assess, Saffron's stated attachment for not him so much, but the life that he represented. So I think that's kind of, there's still a lot more. Basically, it's like they kind of like inch the Saffron story forward in this episode. That's basically all that it is. And when you only have 14 episodes of a show, doing that with a guest star that will only have appeared once before and will never appear once again seems kind of weird. Or I guess unfortunate is more the thing. But one, I think they do it well, and I think the episode is fun as heck surrounding it anyway.
I mean, I like a good heist, as I said last time with Ariel. So, like, seeing them like put together this plan, and the many layered workings of it, and the disguises and all that—that's all good, great fun. But I don't know. I'm gonna have to slightly disagree. It feels to me like, and I don't know how true this is because, I mean, presumably you'd have to have all this stuff ready before you shoot, so this can't actually be true. But it feels like Christina Hendricks came in, knocked it out of the park in what was supposed to be a one-off appearance, so they were like, we need to write another episode for her, and then they got her back. And I mean, that can't be true. They must have written them all, or had at least like all the plots like laid out before they started shooting. But yeah, to me it I don't know, you do get some interesting stuff with her, and like it's a great character, and she's really good at playing it, like just oozing charisma all the time, like sticking her tongue out when Mal's like shooting at the ground and stuff, and just sort of owning her sexuality, and like flaunting her looks, and like how she'll get what she wants all the time. And like it's fun seeing her be the empowered Saffron the whole time. Like it was fun last time because she went from one extreme to the other. This time them all knowing exactly what she is, but them all working together, so she's not a threat, but she is this sort of, nefarious character. It gives it another layer, and like it's fun. Just, I don't know, there's something lacking for me. Like a little bit of punch is not quite there, and maybe it's because we're devoting so much time to a character that isn't part of the main cast. I don't know.
And I think that's it, and I think that's a very valid claim. I think, Saffron was set up once again, I would say, for like probably 4 or 5 more big episodes over the course of, say, 3 seasons, where she probably tries to be a little bit less of a bad person, probably has to die for her sins, kind of thing.
Feminist.
Yes. And while all that would be the subject of much valid discussion and concern, it probably would have made for very good TV, and probably would have made episodes like this mean more in retrospect. Maybe.
Yeah, like in a world where this show goes 3-4 seasons, whatever, it probably doesn't bother me at all, and I probably would think better of it. But knowing that we have so little time to spend in this universe, and like
especially so little time left.
Exactly.
Like at this episode, this was instead of Shindig, in that spot. I don't know, maybe this is not a concern for you, possibly.
But Shindig contributes to Mal and Anara.
Sure.
I know you don't like it, but...
Okay, safe.
Safe sucks. So with Saffron, like, the big thing, the meat of this is this discovery that she has this another husband, Duran, I think his name is, who is an incredibly rich man. And, it's very funny, like, there are 3 different characters in this episode that are married to her, and Mal has the genuinely amazing line of, she says, he's my husband, and he says, well, who in the galaxy ain't? But he makes this, he does his detective work during this, because she immediately flings herself at him, and it turns out she's been, like, missing, and he's been worried sick about her, and, you know, he leaves the room quickly, and she immediately drops, and is like, right, we need to hurry up. And Mal does his detective work, and he asserts that this is, like, the true husband, like, the first one, maybe, and this is the one that, this may be the only man whose opinion she cares about. And that idea, like, it holds weight, and then it doesn't, and then it does, and then it doesn't. And I actually couldn't tell you how true that is, because there's evidence for both sides. Like, you could very easily see it as she married this man, maybe for his money, I don't know, was bored of the safe lifestyle, and then set out to go be a more sort of dangerous person doing crazier stuff. Or she could genuinely... I don't know. What is your read on her feelings for Duran?
I think it is unclear, and I think it is something that needed further exploration. I think this episode would carry more meaning in time with more exploration of Saffron. As it stands, if you want to call it wishy-washy or almost like a poorly executed in that way, I wouldn't get in the way of someone claiming that, just based on the fact that this is supposed to be a pretty powerful moment, and it is a middle chapter in a story that is never going to be concluded once again.
Because, like, I mean, when Mal is saying all of this, she kind of is, her response indicates a little bit that, like, what he's saying is true. And then you have stuff like when the husband starts to look at her with sort of shame or whatever, she points a gun at him and starts screaming. And also it seems like she's kind of lashing out in an attempt to hurt him by saying things to the effect of, oh, I obviously don't love you, you're an idiot, etc. And you could easily read it as just like her overreacting to like Mal prodding at her about this. But then she also does genuinely, she seems to have literally no qualms about just like leaving him behind again and robbing him and like potentially hurting him, etc. So I don't know. And like Mal and her have like this big, what he thinks is a heart to heart, and he says things like, I've seen you with no clothes on, but I never thought I'd see you naked, and all this, where they have these sort of, he thinks he's gotten through to this sort of genuine human moment with her. I don't know. I literally just watched it, and I couldn't tell you. And maybe that's the whole point. Like, we'll never know who Saffron really is. Is Yolanda her name? Is that the first husband? Does she love this man? I guess that's the point of the entire character.
I think it's what we kind of have to accept as the entire point of the character. Just based on the fact that there's nothing else.
Yeah.
So
I do like that she comes out ahead of Mal. Like, she gets the drop on him and leaves him naked in the desert. I know Anara ends up.
But Anara was the backup plan. Like, that was not by...
Exactly.
In the ideal world, Mal was not naked in the desert, and Anara had to save him.
So let's talk about that. Like, because, I mean, that's kind of one of the only three things that happen in this episode. So Mal and Anara have quite an argument at the beginning, wherein she accuses Mal of depriving her of work, and I mean, he starts to join some dots that she's suggesting that he doesn't approve of what she does, or potentially that because he wants her for himself, who knows, that he's deliberately not letting her go to places where there's viable sort of clients for her. And I mean, we don't know if that's true or not, because we haven't seen what's going on or whatever, but they have quite a fight about it, and she calls him a petty thief, and, you know, they both seem to look down on what the other does. You know, he's very much like, I'm comfortable with what I do, and, you know, suggesting you shouldn't be comfortable with what you do. And then just like this whole thing is sort of born out of a need to impress her, sort of rising to the unintentional challenge of, she makes a comment about when's the last time you had serious work, like they stole some dolls or something, and I'd say the hospital job was a pretty good get. Like, they robbed a massive like Alliance facility and got a lot of valuable stuff. But anyway, I don't know. It's all very. I don't know. Like, it does contribute, but given how much they play this card, it is kind of getting a little tiresome for me, them doing this.
Yeah, and you know, kind of Anara's complaint kind of feels out of nowhere in the context of the show. I mean, like, obviously, like, I think they mentioned that, they definitely mentioned this episode that, the original Saffron episode happened 6 months earlier in the actual show's time.
Yes.
So obviously, like, a lot of things happen between the episodes, which explains why they're not all, badly dead from all these bullet wounds they're all getting all the time. I mean, so it's possible, but it doesn't really feel like a moment earned. It kind of feels like artificial conflict based on the fact that we don't actually get to see it. We only have to hear about it. But I know what's interesting. Know what I don't like is Anar calls him a petty thief, and Mal takes that hard, and Anara is kind of portrayed to be being rude for saying that, and kind of has to, like, make up for it in that moment, so to speak. Whereas
he calls her a whore all the time.
All the time. And the show wants us to think he's a dumbass for it, but it's notable the difference in how they want us and how they make Anara respond to that. And when the focus is on Mal all the time, as the show really is for the most part, it gets closer to that favorite word of ours, problematic.
Yes.
Or probably more just less than ideal in the grand scheme of things. But it is, once again, I feel like I've said this a million times in this episode, but this was a brief detour, a brief middle chapter in an arc that we never got to see properly close. Yeah. So it is hard to judge it without knowing where it goes, but in its own bubble, it's a little less than ideal.
Yeah. Well, I think that's fitting given what we said at the beginning, where these are two episodes where it feels like they've hit their stride, like they're firing on all cylinders, they're in the middle. So it makes sense that a lot of it would feel kind of like it never paid off, because, it was meant to. Like, you forgive the early ones, they're setting everything up, and we do get kind of some resolutions from the finale and the film, but these episodes were intended to serve a larger purpose, and they don't get to. So we are going to get those issues with them, regardless of how fun they are, as in a bubble. So yeah, difficult. River says funny stuff. She says she can kill Jane with her brain, and that's good. And she calls Jane out on being called Jane.
I also think it's wonderful. So, like, the way the episode shot is, it goes from revealing Mal brought Saffron aboard,
yes,
to Saffron running down the plot, essentially. And Wash just has this incredible look on his face, like, and you think it's about to be, oh, this plan's impossible. But he goes exactly what he should have done, which is, why are you here?
Why is this woman on our ship? Do you remember what happened?
Does anyone not remember what happened? And that's a lovely stuff. That's a lovely moment. And perfect wash.
Definitely. Perfect wash. So, I think that will do it for these two. Not as good of a 1-2 punch as last week.
No.
But good.
2 episodes I really enjoy.
I like War Stories a lot more than I like Trash.
War Stories is definitely better. War Stories is definitely in the actual top half, I think.
Yeah.
I think you've sold me on Trash can't be in the top half.
There's nothing wrong with it. Like, the whole I would say I like all the episodes, just, they can't all be winners.
Yes. Every episode has something to like, although that will be tested next week.
Yes, it will.
But Trash does not have quite as much substance as War Stories, Ariel, Out of Gas, Our Mrs. Reynolds, Serenity, The Train Job, and I would say Jamestown as well. So that kind of bumps down to the not top half.
Indeed. But, speaking of trash, speaking of next week we will be talking about The Message, which I'm guessing is actually your favourite episode by doing the maths of you refusing to reveal what you think your favourite episode is, and you sort of hinting that it's not one I have named so far. You don't have to confirm that.
I decided weeks ago to wait till the very end of this podcast experience to reveal, or at least until the end of the last episode.
Okay, I'm not looking for you to confirm. I'm just sort of playing detective out loud as a sealed envelope, as it were, but it's not really sealed because you can just respond. So The Message and Heart of Gold. Boo.
I hope I find things to like in Heart and Gold. Mm-hmm. I just remember disliking it.
From memory, it's my by far least favorite episode.
Yes, same.
So we'll see how that plays.
I think
out.
I think in that sense, though, it's almost in some ways more interesting to examine it this time. Because I think we should really challenge ourselves to explain why.
Okay.
If nothing else.
We each have to bring one thing we like about the episode and then a grown-up argument as to why it fucking sucks.
All right.
That seems the grown-up
Until next week.
Exactly. Until next week. We'll be doing our homework. You guys subscribe and all of that. And enjoy your lives. Goodbye.
Place I can be since I found serenity. You can't take the sky from me.